Which languages are easy and which ones are difficult? What makes a language easier or more difficult to learn? Hi, I'm Stephanie and I'm a language enthusiast and a polyglot that currently speaks 8 languages. Welcome to my channel. Here I share tips on language learning and how you can make it fun and efficient. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome again. I love to have you here. In this video, I would like to tackle a question that was posed by one of my subscribers. The question is, which are easy languages to learn and how hard is Spanish, for example, to learn? So to tackle this question, I do realize that it's going to be a little bit complicated because it's a very thorny question. There are just so many factors that go into what makes a language easier or more difficult to learn, and I'm going to try and distill them all into two main categories of objective factors and subjective factors. So from an objective point of view, what makes a language easier or not is how closely related it is to other languages that you already speak. It doesn't have to be your native one, it could be your native or it could be other ones that you speak at a very high level. So languages are divided into big branches like Indo-European, Dravidian, Afro-Asiatic, Sino-Tibetan, etc. And then they also form smaller language families, examples of which are, say, Slavic, or Romance languages, Semitic languages, Germanic languages, etc. These categories are very useful in helping us find the similarities between languages and categorize them easier that way. So let's take an example. If you are, say, a Spanish speaker, learning Portuguese, Italian, French, or for example Romanian or Romansh is going to be very easy for you. And that's because those languages, they share this commonality of like a common history, a little bit of a cultural undercurrent as well, of common origin, right? Because all of them come from Vulgar Latin. And they also have a lot of vocabulary in common as a result, a lot of grammar, like the way that speakers of those languages express themselves tends to be similar. There's just so many similarities between those languages in terms of, how the language works. So of course it's going to be easier. And that was certainly the case for me. Portuguese after Spanish is a breeze, as is Italian and as is French. So that is definitely very, very helpful if you learn languages from the same family. Another case could be with a language like English, for example. English is an interesting one because it is a Germanic language, but so much of its vocabulary is Romance-based, thanks to a lot of like Roman conquest and then later the Norman conquest of the 1066. So a lot of like Latin and French words enter the language. As a result, it does have a Germanic core and it is a Germanic language, but so many Latin words means that speakers of English are going to have a little bit of an easier time picking up Latin-based languages just because of that shared commonality of the roots of many words and vocabulary speaking. But at the end of the day, even though English is a Germanic language that also got a lot of inspiration vocabulary-wise from Romance languages, both English and the Romance languages are actually Indo-European. And so if you stay within the same broad language family, of course it's going to be easier. Now for an English speaker, a language like Spanish is going to be relatively easy. But say for a Slavic speaker, Spanish isn't necessarily going to be as easy. Something like, say you speak Serbian, Russian is going to be much easier for you than German or Spanish or, a language of those other families. But German and Spanish are still going to be easier for you than, say, Arabic, because Arabic is a Semitic language. It is not Indo-European. So within those broad and not so broad language families, it is important to take into account similarity, and it is important to think about how far removed the language that you speak is from the one that you're trying to learn. And there are some rankings. For English speakers, the most famous one is the FSI ranking or the Foreign Service Institute ranking. They actually have put a lot of effort into creating this database, which is like how far removed the language is from English, how many hours of instruction does one need to get fluent at it, etc. So that can be very useful. If your native language is another, or if you speak other languages to a very high level, you can also go ahead and do a quick Google search on that. You can just enter, easiest language to learn for, Russian speakers or German speakers, whatever it is. And then it's gonna what you're gonna get is a result that's telling you which languages are most similar to the one you already speak. So you can start with whatever base and then look up which languages are similar and which are objectively easier in that way. However, does that mean that, once you pick a language that's, close enough to one you already speak, it's gonna be easy for you? Not necessarily. And that is where a lot of the subjective factors come in, because a subjective factor can sometimes be much more powerful than this objective ranking. What do I mean? I mean that a lot of language learning is very, very dependent on your passion for a certain language. I realize sometimes people don't have the liberty to pick their languages because, say, you work for a multinational company and they want to send you abroad to set up an office in a new country, and you have to learn the language of that country, and there's just not much negotiation there. Or you need to learn a certain language at school because that's what your class is going for and you can't really get another one. There's many limitations. So sometimes it's not about you choosing. But if you're learning a language that you do have the liberty to choose, it usually works better if you choose one that you're passionate about. How much you like the language is one of the biggest determiners of success. It makes all the difference. Sometimes you can have a very hard language, objectively speaking, that is very different from anything else you speak, and that has nothing to do grammatically speaking or from a vocabulary point of view, from an expression point of view, anything that is in common with your native language or with the languages you speak, and you can find it very easy still, even though objectively it's supposed to be hard. How? Because you have passion for it. Passion in language learning translates to motivation, a desire to learn the language. It makes you learn just much more often, and language learning can take a long time. So having that passion, having that motivation, being able to want to learn that language, that is a very big deal. And that can be much more important than similarity. I can give an example from my own language learning on that. Let's say Greek and German. Objectively speaking, Greek is supposed to be harder for me than German because it's a Hellenic language. It has no living relatives, whereas German is a Germanic language and I already speak English. So, I'm supposed to be able to learn German much faster than I am able to learn Greek. However, with German, most of what I've had is school instruction. I haven't done much self-study because my passion for Greek is just much larger. And so Greek, which is objectively speaking, I realize it's a very hard language. Subjectively, for me, it is not, because I am so obsessed with it in the best possible definition of that word, that it just really helps my learning skills. It really helps with motivation. I just study it with so much passion, and I love studying it. It is fun for me. It is not a chore. So something that's supposed to be very hard is becoming easy thanks to my passion for it. And I think that is very important. So sometimes, subjective factors like that can really influence the objective ones of how far removed it is. Now, there's also some other aspects that determine how quickly you can learn a language. A lot of it is your attitude. And some language might appear easier because of the attitude you have towards it. Because a lot of it is like, what's going on here? A lot of it is, do you believe that you can do it? And if you believe that you can do it, that usually comes from like previous languages that you've learned. Like the more languages you learn, the easier it gets, because you just get so much. Well, yes, you do get the practice, right? Like the more you practice, the better you get at something, of course. But also you get this moment where you have the confidence that you can do this. So if you have studied many languages before, you have the confidence that you can do it, and that makes every subsequent language that much easier thanks to that confidence. And a lot of the times it's about the stories you tell yourself. So if you want to learn Arabic and you decide to tell yourself that no, for you it's not going to be a hard language, for you it's going to be easy because you really like the culture of, I don't know, a couple of Arabic countries that you're interested in, or you really like the way that it sounds, etc. Then if you tell that story to yourself, it's just gonna be easier for you. A lot of it depends on your attitude. So it's very difficult to determine for you as a language learner how these things are gonna interplay. What's gonna happen if there's a language that is very far removed from what you speak, but you love it and you have a great attitude towards it? Is that gonna be easier than a language that is very similar to your native one, but you don't have that much passion for it? I don't know. It's very difficult to say how these factors are going to interplay. So, what makes a language easy or difficult to learn depends on so many factors, and for every person, it's going to be very individual. So, I am really skeptical whenever somebody tells me that language X is easy and language Y is difficult, because really you can't know. It depends on a lot of stuff. It depends on the learner's attitude towards the language, how much they like the language, how often they study it, how many resources are available out there, because sometimes there is a resource constraint when it comes to language learning, how similar it is to the language that they already speak, how many other languages they know, what their mental state is. A lot of times, a lot of things that go on in your personal life or in your career or in other aspects of your life can affect your language learning. So if there's a language that you really want to learn, go for it, and don't think so much about whether it is hard or easy, because those are things that are very dependent on other factors and that can fluctuate a lot throughout your language learning. Let me know if you have any questions. I wish you the best of luck with your language learning. I hope this helped answer your question, and please like and subscribe if you like this video so that I know that you've appreciated it and I can continue to make more videos like that. I'll see you soon on my channel.